Welcome to the Relaxed Dog Podcast, the podcast where the dogs are the stars of the show. Welcome to the Relaxed Dog Podcast, sponsored by the Relaxed Dog. Thank you for listening. I am your host, Robert Ober, and I hope that you and your dog are well. Our guest in episode 21 this week is Katrina Marion, all the way from a remote farm somewhere in outback Queensland. And she is going to be sharing a bit about her dog, Fergus. But first, on to some doggy news. And a gentleman by the name of Rudy Armstrong, who is an 86-year-old Navy veteran, was living on his houseboat with his Chihuahua Boo Boo in Northern Carolina in the US. And unfortunately, Rudy didn't know it, but he was sitting on the deck one day and suffered a stroke. Couldn't really help himself. Boo Boo jumped into action, ran down the dock, and got someone, I think it was the dock master, got their attention, got them to follow him back, and needless to say, the dockmaster called for the paramedics, and Rudy is now recovering well, thanks to Boo Boo. The next item of doggy news is an interesting spin on a bit of marketing. A company by the name of Bush has created a dog brew, which is apparently sold in a beer-like can. It doesn't have any alcohol or hops in it, which we know is not the best for dogs, but it is full of vegetables, herbs, spices, water, and pork broth. And you can only get it online, and apparently they sold out of their first run. So you can crack a cold one with your best friend. Last little bit of news is just a bit of a warning. In a place called Ryle in Wales, overexcited young dog on the beach chased after some seagulls. The seagulls flew out to sea, and the unidentified doggy kept swimming after them. The lifeboat crew were alerted, and they caught up with the pup about half a mile from the shore. Rescued doggy and dog and owner are going well, but I don't think he's going to be let off for chasing the seagulls too much anymore. Onward now with this. Welcome to the Relaxed Dog, and it is my pleasure. Welcome to the Relaxed Dog, and it is my pleasure to introduce Katrina, and we're going to be talking about her dog, Fergus. So, as per usual, I ask everyone to take us back to just before you got Fergus and tell us how you guys got connected.
I bred Fergus, so I owned his mother, Lacey. She was a little blue stumpy tail cattle dog bitch, a purebred bitch. And I came across his father by super good fortune. Well, it was a terrible story with how I ended up with him, but he was, I was lucky. I was driving down a street and saw a dog, a magnificent red stumpy dog, and asked the lady about him, and her husband had died and unexpectedly, and she had this dog that was just way too much for town, and he wouldn't stay in the yard, and he was a horrible handful for us. So I took him home, and he was a great dog for me.
And to let everyone know, home for you is a little bit different than most other people.
Yeah, so I live in central Queensland, so he was able to, come home and be intrinsically fulfilled. He was able to work cattle and, have the life he was designed to, which is, why he was unfulfilled in town. He just wasn't the life for him.
So roughly how old when you got him?
How old was Bungie? So that was Fergus's dad.
Oh, Fergus's dad, yep, sorry.
Yep, so he was maybe 5 or 6 when I got him. So he was probably a dog that wasn't going to be much longer for this world. When I just admired the dog and pulled up to say, what an amazing looking dog, because as dog people do. Just to tell this lady I thought her dog was just magnificent, and she kind of handed him over.
Yeah, not usually as you do.
Not usually as you do. And normally you don't go, yeah. So she was just a lovely lady who was, left with a dog and had to move to town, and just he was the wrong dog for that situation. And that's how it goes. And I bred those 2 working dogs together and got a litter of little blue pups. And Fergus was one of them.
And did Fergus sort of stand out in the litter?
He was a horrible dog right from the start.
Oh, no.
He was growly, and he was unfriendly. My dogs are, any dogs I breed are socialised really well with my kids. I've got 5 kids, and my oldest is 19 now, so they're I've had puppy socialisers for a very long time, and my oldest daughter was really young then. She was only 18 months old, I think, and Fergus was, socialised with her and some other kids and loved kids. But when he was 6 weeks old, the vet picked him up and he bit the vet on the face. So he's and hard, probably bit him too. So he was never any different throughout his whole life.
Did he get a hard time from his litter mates?
No, he was just one of the gang with them. He was never dog aggressive.
Okay.
Ever. He'd start a fight he couldn't possibly win, but he'd never fight with small dogs or, little dogs come and try and pick him and stand over him, and he'd think it was a wonderful time. But no, he was just a horrible little dog that hated people from the time his eyes opened, I think.
And how did he sort of adapt? So did you keep many of the other litter mates?
No, I only kept him.
So why did you keep the worst one from your point of view? Sorry.
He probably wasn't the worst one for me. He probably, when we look at the function of stumpy tail cattle dogs and cattle dogs, a lot of that is to be quite protective. And I live in a situation where dogs can be like that. So he wouldn't be, he certainly wouldn't have been suitable for a town home, and he probably wasn't suitable for a lot of homes, but he was quite biddable at the same time as being, looking for opportunities to bite people. So he was a challenging dog.
And you took to working early on?
He was an excellent stock dog. I could and I did tail weaners and work cattle through the yards with him by myself. Like he was a very capable dog that took the place of, a couple of people. And unusually for a cattle dog, some of my lines did carry it a little. Back then, he had a lot of casts, so you could cast him out around cattle, and he'd block a lead and work a lead by himself. And it was just work in that border collie style of, being able to go up the front. But he was, he was a very, very capable dog. He turned into a very capable dog in that aspect. He, I competed in canine pro sports with him, which is a protection dog sport.
Okay. At what sort of age did you start doing that with him?
That was in 2006. So he would have only been he was only a couple of years old. And he placed third in his division, so he was quite credible in that field. I also did a couple other things with him because he loved children so much. I did a trial program with a Western Queensland school where children who were having trouble reading would read to a dog.
Mm-hmm.
It had to do with fact as adults, when children read to us, we constantly correct them or someone. It also doesn't give kids a chance to correct their own mistakes, and I'm sure when they hear their own voice out loud, they know they've made a mistake and they go back and fix it.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic program. I've heard a bit about it, and I can't remember what the percentage was, but for the kids to actually improve, it was one of the more successful methods that the teachers found, and they were like, whoa, hang on, all we've got to do is get them to talk, to read to a dog, and it was a fantastic feedback for them.
Yep, get a dog to sit, stay and make soft eye contact and you're on a winner. And he would sit and stay and look at kids, all day. That was probably it was super rewarding for him to do that. And it was rewarding for me to watch it because you just got to sit across, sit so that you can still supervise, but read your own book. You're not really part of it and let it go. And it's really good to watch that kind of organic growth of the kids and have a cranky blue dog be part of it.
Any incidents with the teachers?
No, he was really biddable, but he'd eyeball people. Like, he'd let them know that he had a lot of presence, and he'd let them know that that was uncomfortably close for him, but he was never risky with kids, and said he was biddable. You could stop him biting people.
Mm-hmm.
He just didn't enjoy it.
Going back on, you touched on doing the protection sports. So there probably not a lot of that breed doing those type things.
Absolutely not. And, I guess for good reason. He probably didn't have the best temperament to do it. Like his sport. Like, if I was looking for a sport dog, I certainly wouldn't choose a stumpy tail cattle dog in that venue.
But I'm guessing he enjoyed the engaging with the decoys part.
He loved that part. And he was said he was quite controllable. So, those two factors together made it, a good outlet for him, something else a bit fun for him to do.
Ah, excellent. So on the farm, does he work sort of with a team, or is he more of an individual, like when he was working for the herding?
He'd work by himself a lot, and not because he didn't work well with other dogs, just because he was handy enough that you didn't have to have a whole lot of dogs with you. And he would work well. He was such a versatile little dog. He kind of and unusually enough, today on my Facebook memories, a picture of him came up. And I went, how serendipitous is that? Like, it's telling me something, but you forget sometimes you forget, the usefulness of having a friend for so long that was by your side for all those years. When you initially lose them, you go through that terrible grief and mourning period, but just he came with me to work every week. He came with me everywhere. He was just such a part until age got the better of him. It was such a part of my life, and you tend to forget that as you get older too, after they've gone.
Yes, it's one of those sort of like it's sort of forgotten. I like to think you don't sort of consciously think of them that much, but they're always there though.
Yeah, you've got the memory of him, and I think about him all the time. But it's that I think about him, not just that, not just how useful he was as a tool, as a working animal, I guess. I think of all the cool parts about him, like how he'd be so snuggly and so horrid at the same time.
So when you say snuggly, because a lot of people have the idea that on the farm, the working dogs, they're outside, they sleep outside, they don't come inside, and they're not a snuggly on the lounge type thing. But
he was a snuggly on the 4-wheeler dog, or if you're sitting down after work, he'd come and he'd come and sit between your legs, snuggle between your legs, or he'd sit on your lap and put his head under your arm, and he was you couldn't have dragged him inside. He certainly wasn't a house dog, and if he did, he would have pissed on everything. But he was just because working dogs live outside doesn't mean there's not that huge connection.
Definitely. And on average, how many other dogs were around at the time through Fergus's life on the farm?
I probably had 15 or 20 other dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So there'd be, all different types of working dogs and stuff come through. So he said he was great with other dogs. You could pair him with pups or bitches. He'd pair him with adult dogs. He never had. I've never seen him start a fight with anything he could possibly win.
So, have any special relationships with any of them during the time?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I had during his life, I had a couple. I've had a whole heap of dogs that I'm really close with, but I'd have a couple of, he had a different role because he was of all my working cattle dogs at the time, he was probably my favourite. You shouldn't have favourites, but he was probably my dear old boy. But I had a couple of band dogs at the time that were, went on to do good things with and were very close to me. And I had an old hunting dog that was elderly when Fergus was around, who I think I still cry about now. He's been gone for 10 years, maybe more.
Mm.
So, you do get close to lots of, I'd get close to lots of them, I guess. I think it doesn't matter whether you have one dog or 10 of them, they all still find a place in your heart.
Oh, absolutely. More so than most people.
Yeah. I think I've probably let go of people a bit quicker and easier than I've let go of some dogs.
Mm-hmm. So on the farm, what were some sort of adventures that you can sort of recall? Did he behave majority of the time?
No, really. He was. My dad lived with us, and my dad was terrified of him. But right up until the day my dad died, and Fergus would encourage that behaviour, and my dad fed him for 4.5 years every day, and still couldn't win him over. He was he'd rush up behind him and put his nose on the back of his leg.
Mm-hmm.
Fergus would put his nose on the back of his leg, so just to scare him, just because it was funny. He'd spent ages sneaking around and stalking and getting himself in position. He never bit him. He just thought it was amusing to scare people.
So it's only your dad, or did you do that to other people as well?
No, he'd bite other people. He was I had to be really careful of him because he understood he wasn't allowed to bite. So he'd put himself in a position where a bite would be justifiable. And he discovered that the best way to do that was to cock his leg on people. That there was someone he hated, really hated. A friend of mine's husband was getting some stuff out of the back of the ute. And I said, Fergus, pull your head in. So he was just sitting there. You could see the steam coming out of his ears, but he knew he wasn't allowed to bite. So he certainly wouldn't. And he cocked his leg on the side of this fella's head. And before he
head?
He laid back to swing at my dog, and Ferg bit him and went, no one hits me, mate. So from then he discovered he probably weed on way more people than he ever bit, but he did it with the intention that if they kicked out at him, he could bite them. So he was truly, 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 he was a horrible dog. He would have had such a short lifespan had he lived anywhere else. But he lived to make old bones with me. I used to think it was hilarious.
Oh, I like that. Like the strategy. There's thought behind there.
Yeah, he was a long-term thinker, we used to reckon. And killed plenty of snakes and used to kill brown snakes. That was one of his favourite hobbies.
Oh, that's a hobby you could probably do without, but for you guys.
So terrifying. Like he'd come back with a brown snake and I'd be going, oh, he's bitten, he's going to die. Like, do I make the rush to the vets or, will he survive the trip? And he never ever got tagged. Well, never got tagged that he was, that he was envenomated anyway. That he was, bitten and got sick from. But I reckon he nearly stopped my heart 100 times from it. He'd be proudly dragging a snake around and, oh, look what I got you. Look what I prepared for you.
I think I just saw not that long ago was a clip of a snake in someone's yard, and there was 3 or 4 big dogs just standing around barking at it, and this little terrier just went charging through, straight past the dogs, ripped into the snake, shook it, killed it, walked off.
And that's what he used to do. I mean, he did it right up until the last year or 2 of his life. He never, I think when he must have known he was a bit slow for it and, never worried about it. But, yeah, he was, I guess, looking back now, I'm thinking, imagine trying to manage a dog like that when you lived in town and then there was people coming by all the time. It'd just be horrendous. Thankfully, I live where I live.
Definitely a farm dog.
Absolutely, and had to be managed as a farm dog. I did have him evaluated and put on the appendix register, so he was shown one in confirmation shows.
Oh, okay.
Shown once and evaluated at a show. So he was quite biddable. Like someone was able to handle his mouth, and I don't say he enjoyed the experience, but he was quite that biddable.
So did you, when you say enjoyed the experience, was he one to enjoy a bit of pampering, bit of washing, or just like nah?
Certainly. I used to puff him up, and I've got a hydro bath and a force dryer, so I used to wash him and puff him up, like fluff his hair up and make him a little princess a bit, but he loved it. And he just didn't love other people, unless they were small humans, and he loved all small humans. He just didn't like other people.
Mm-hmm.
He had just no time for their presence. I posted the picture of it. I've shared the picture of him on Facebook today, and people on my friends list were remembering him with horror. So I went, he still made a mark years after he's gone.
Guessing it's for more than that one reason. He sounds like an awesome dog.
Yeah, he was awesome. He was really an awesome dog. He was tough, and he'd been kicked by cattle and run over them, and had all the tough experiences that cattle dogs get when they work. And he never backed down from anything. He would never let you down when you needed him most. I rolled a bike on myself tailing cattle out once with him, and he still held cattle up. He was there for hours by himself, and never let anything go. Never deserted his post.
Can you share a little bit more about that?
So Fergus and I were tailing out young cattle. So it involves getting cattle used to being handled and getting them used to the pressure that a dog puts on and how to calm down and not be frightened of dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd let some cattle out, we'd let these weaners out. I was on a little 4-wheeler and I flipped it over. I was hit a gully that I didn't see and flipped it. And the cattle, like Fergus blocked the cattle up and held them there. And I was a bit injured and had to go and get another bike to come back to him to get him with. And I thought the cattle would have been gone. I thought he would have gone and had better dog things to do than hold cattle there for hours. I came back down and he'd still had them held up. He still was stopping them from going forward at the last point we were at.
Wow.
Held them there in a mob, which is a big effort for a little dog.
That's some serious commitment there.
Yeah, and he was tough and dependable, and I guess that's probably my my greatest memories of him is just how tough and dependable he actually was. He on another occasion he started a fight with two big dogs that probably were each 20 kilos or more bigger than him. Like, he was just an average size stumpy tail cattle dog, but he picked on two big dogs, and I thought he was dead. Like, there's no way. I yelled at them and they let him go, and I thought, obviously he's dead. There's no possible way he could survive that. And I locked one of them up and checked him for injuries, and then I went back over to where they were, and poor Fergus trying to fight this other dog. And I'm like, oh, Jesus, leave them alone. The dog's trying to get away from him and going, we're not interested in fighting anymore. He still wasn't over it. And it was the only fight he ever got in, and it was hours before I was due to fly out to the States. And he was fairly, it was only skin rip, but it was quite bad. And I rang the vets and they agreed I had to ketamine him to take him to the vet. So I'd come and ketamine him in the car park. And we took him in, they stitched him up, and I had to get my nephew, who was 6 at the time, to look after him while I was away. He just wasn't easily able to be handled by anyone else. I was going, I don't know if someone's telling me not to go, or should I stay and look after my dog? What do you do? But he was fine. He held up really well.
And a 6-year-old on a farm is a lot more grown up than a 6-year-old in the city.
I guess, but they do kind of have to be, though. So, yeah, it's I think my twins are 8 now, and they can they've been able to drive for years. So, I guess you kind of get quite capable when you're little and you grow up like that.
So how was Fergus when he was a pup around herding the cattle?
I don't start them as babies. I give them a little bit of time to mature before I start them.
Mm-hmm.
So as a pup, he just kind of came along and learnt the rules. Learned to ride on the back of a bike and ride in the back of a car, and how to get on with other dogs, and how to be cool around kids, and all the other little things he needed to learn before he was very cute as a pup, but he learned all the other things that he needed to learn before he got into the place where he was going to be working.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time I didn't have the luxury of starting dogs on sheep, so often cattle dogs are started on sheep just to give them, it's not as intimidating or scary, and gives them a little bit more it gives you a little bit more control over them, and you can teach the pups you can teach them much more easily. It gives them, gives them that better insight into what the job's going to be like, rather than be thrown in the deep end to start with. I don't think he would have seen cattle till he was 8 months old. He just got to be a dog. He got to be my mate who came with me.
Nice. Do you have any favourite spots on the farm that he'd sort of like more than others?
He liked to pretend he was a crocodile, and he would hop in water at any given opportunity. And lay in wait with just his nose and his eyes and his ears sticking out of the water. Wait for someone or something to come past and jump out and make a game of it.
I was going to ask if you had any weird habits, but that's more than that.
Besides the fact that I don't really think I heard him bark in his entire lifetime. Besides the fact that he didn't bark, and was silent. I've had dogs that don't bark, but they're vocal in other ways.
Mm-hmm.
He was not vocal. in any shape or form. He was but he was super expressive. He had super facial expressions. So he was when he was happy, you could look at him and tell he was happy. When he was content or tired, you could tell he was either of those. And when he was angry, you could tell. He'd pinpoint his little eyes and narrow them into little slits and stare at people and follow their every movement. And he was I guess he expressed himself in a different way.
Okay. And so what other sort of weird habits would you say he had?
He would find in his kennel. He had I had kennels at the time. My kennels were raised working dog kennel, so they're raised up a metre off the ground, and so there's no fleas or ticks and no snakes can get in there and things like that. And he'd find a weak point, and I had good sturdy kennels. He's the only dog that ever got out of them because he'd find a weak point and work it for months and months and months just to get out.
There's a bit of a Houdini.
Yep, and not do anything. He never did anything wrong. Well, so long as there was no one around, he never did anything wrong when he was out. He never killed chickens or, chased the cat or did any of those kind of things.
Just to prove a point.
Just to prove a point. He was, and I guess that's what made him such a challenging dog to own. He was a dog you could just never take lightly because he'd try and, I used to think that he used to sit there and try and outthink me. And he used to be he'd understand, and in training it was heaps of fun. And he taught me so much, but you could give him the parameters and he'd try and give him the parameters of behaviour. When we're in the house yard, we can't chase the cat. And he'd go, but does that apply here? And does that apply here? Does that apply to all cats? Or, and he'd test the boundaries all the time. And you could tell that he wasn't being disobedient. He just understood that picture and didn't know if it applied anywhere else. So I always used to reckon I could never be offended by a dog that was more intelligent than me. It's just, I just had to work harder than him.
Just to make all the different variations. Yes, you can't do it here, or here.
You can't bite on people. You can't bite people, but not allowed to, Putty. But if they hit you, you could possibly bite someone. Rightio, well, I'm going to make people hit me so I can bite them. That's the kind of stuff. Or you're not allowed out of your kennel, but if you're going to work the side of it for the next 6 months and loosen up a screw so you can push your way out through the tin, well, yeah, we'll work on that.
So how was he health-wise?
I just sexed him. It was maybe 7 when I just sexed him because that probably was the only downfall of him. He used to he would try and breed any bitch that existed. So it was way easier to just sex him to, not have any unwanted litters from him. And I did breed one litter from him, and I gave my best friend his son, who had the exact same temperament as him, and his name was Brian. But I just sexed Ferg, and he, which was an experience all in itself, to take him into the vet because they knew after stitching him up and throwing him from a pup, they everyone's kind of reluctant to handle him, so we knocked him out in the car park, muzzled him, and I took him in and I picked him up as soon as they finished so that he was and was there with him while he recovered, so he didn't do anything silly.
Mm-hmm.
And besides that, the only other time he ever went to the vet was when I got him put to sleep. So he survived all those years, and he got old in the last couple and was slowing down more and more. And I used to pretend that we'd do. I'd have some weaners in the yards and get him to work around the yards with me, but he was he was a bit old to keep working the way he always had.
Mm-hmm. So do you notice much difference when he came home after being desexed in his mannerisms?
It didn't change him at all. He'd just not bitches but not get them in pub. That's it. He was he was a horrible dog. Like, it was the only beauty of it was there was no babies for him, so it didn't change his behaviour whatsoever.
Just as strong-willed and determined.
Yeah, it wasn't testosterone that caused his problems.
What about different games and things like that? Do you have a favourite?
Back then I probably didn't understand. There's two things in Fergus's time. There's a couple of things that I didn't do that I wished. I've recently, in the last few years, become better at those things. And one of them is playing with dogs.
Mm-hmm.
The other is using food to train. I never used food to train because I guess when I started my training journey, that was a horrendous thing that only sissy people did. But now it's such an integral part of my training that can't believe I wasn't doing it before. And the same with play. Fergus would play. Like, we'd have games where he'd where I'd be walking along and he'd bring a stick over to me, or mucking around trying to trip me over, and fun things that he did. But I didn't play with him. Like, he didn't have a favourite toy, or he'd chase a Kong and chase a stick, but only every now and then. He wasn't obsessed by it or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of wish now that I had those. I guess in our journey as a trainer and a dog owner, we should aim to improve ourselves and improve our relationships all the time. And,
yeah, but you only know what you know until you know better.
That's right. But, if we're not trying to improve our relationships with animals, then we're really doing ourselves such a disservice. So I
can't remember who originally said that. I think a few people sort of say that, and I'm a firm believer in that.
Absolutely. And I think it's our role to, seek out new information and see how we can integrate it to, improve the lives of everyone around us, people too, but especially our relationship with animals.
Absolutely.
I do live with some regrets that I didn't, he was trained in quite a compulsive way, which was the way at the time, but it certainly didn't extinguish his spirit.
I'm going to ask a question that I ask everybody, and that's, I can't, for you to complete the sentence, I can't believe my dog ate, and it's going to be, I suppose, maybe different, because I'm also going to ask with his diet, being a farm and a working dog, it's going to be different to, I think, a lot of other dogs' normal diets.
Yeah. I can't believe my dog used to eat lucerne pellets for fun.
Lucerne pellets, okay.
A horrible thing to eat. Besides that, I feed probably different. I feed lots of raw, lots of opportunistic raw, and back then I probably fed. What fed back then? Just a working dog food. I would have fed whatever. Until recently, there's been some till I started buying pallet buys of food. There was some difficulty with getting consistently good quality food.
Mm-hmm.
So pallet buys of Royal Cannon's where it's at. It's about the only way to maintain good quality dry food for me anyway.
So did you travel much with Fergus?
Yeah, he travelled. I travel, like just today I've been to, today, before I got here, I've driven from Charleville today, which is 600 or 700 kilometres from here. And next weekend the kids and I will go to Brisbane, and they'll take their little dogs, and then the next weekend we go north to Townsville, which is another 20 hours next weekend, and whatever it is, 15 hours, 16 hours the weekend after. So we travel lots. And our dogs tend to come with us a lot. So Fergus did hundreds of thousands of kilometres in his lifetime. Most of it was sitting in the front seat. So he had a spot on the back on the driver's side where I used to tie him up. He didn't enjoy being in the cage on the back, but he used to be tied up just behind the driver's side. So he was the first one there when you got out. That's why he liked that spot.
Mm-hmm.
He had the number one spot. Or if he wasn't there, he was beside me on the seat or in the back beside a car seat. So he was small enough that he could hop in the front of the car and shed his horrible white hair everywhere and lick food from baby's hands and generally just be a dog.
Nice. Do you have any favourite places that you went to apart from being on the farm?
We've had a couple of properties in his time, but at Middlemount, I lived at Middlemount. I worked at Middlemount. I worked in mining, and I used to have a set of kennels on a property next to where I was working next to the town, and used to take my dogs to work with me every week. So he was part of that time in my life. So I spent a lot of 12.5-hour shifts at work and come back to a mining camp, which isn't exactly not a real fun place if you're well, there wasn't as many women in the industry as there is now, so it was pretty lonely and pretty quiet. So I get Ferg and get a couple other dogs, and we go and look for a pig at night time, or just go walking around in the bush, go and have a look for things. So I kind of spent a lot of time with him when I was in that stage of my life. He was an older dog then, but he hadn't hit that old age mark yet. So he was super reliable, he was my best mate. So we got to spend a lot of time in the bush together and a lot of time wandering around, just looking at things, I guess. So that was, I think people call it bushwalking.
Nice. Do you enjoy the hunting?
Yeah, he was, he didn't mind it. He didn't mind anything that got him out and got him doing things. He wasn't super proficient. I wouldn't have hunted him by himself. But I think he just liked to do things. And I guess that's the same for all dogs, isn't it? It's not what we do with them, it's the adventure of doing something.
Absolutely. Getting them to fulfill their lives the way that they want to fulfill them.
Yeah. And I tell my kids, I tell it to my kids a fair bit. Some people have a magical skill where even going out and going to the shops or going and feeding the chooks or, doing fairly routine tasks can become an adventure. And that's something, not just with my kids that I try and make it. So we go on adventures, we call them adventures, and we go on adventures all the time. Like, they're not really exciting things in the scheme of life, but you can make everything you do fun and fulfilling. So it's a good strategy that I try and adopt with my dogs. We might not be doing anything that's actually useful. We might not be doing formal training, but we're going to make it as fulfilling and fun as we can.
No, I think you've nailed that there, and it's what you make of it.
That's right. When you're going for a walk, and Ferg only lived with me, like I spent a couple of times briefly in town, and Fergie comes to town. It's not really rewarding for him to walk along on a lead or do any of those type of things, but make it fun. Go and chase Go and let him chase bugs around in the long grass, and as you walk along, like, it didn't have to all be formal and rigid. We could let it be organic and fun.
I was going to say there probably wouldn't have been much time where he would have been on the lead. Would that be right?
No, and I don't. I'd have dogs now. I mean, now I try and make sure at least when they're pups, I start them on lead so that I've got that I've got that skill built in for later on, but I wouldn't. My leads are carefully kept in a storage unit on my veranda, and unless we're traveling, they don't come out. We've got a little travel bag of dog leads and collars and stuff that we take with us everywhere, but they wouldn't have a lead clipped on them from week to week. It doesn't mean fun things for them. It's not as much fun for a dog who's used to being able to run freely and make all his own decisions, for good or bad, when he's out with you, to have that control of walking on a lead. And his movement's quite restricted. Even though leads are as long as they are, it's still quite restricted, and it's more challenging to make it fun for the dog.
Oh, absolutely. And I, with our dog Marley, I always walk her on a 5 metre lead, and wherever there's the space, she can use the whole length, whatever she wants to do, and then I just sort of like grab it up if there's a need that she shouldn't have that space for whatever, if there's a tight footpath or something like that we need to go through.
Yeah, and it's about that. It's about balancing that sense of freedom with safety. You don't want to ever put your dogs in a situation where they're unsafe, but you also want them to have that experience and that feeling of freedom and being in control of their own destiny and decisions and their own tasks. So it's hard to get the balance. I don't envy anyone who lives in town and has to try and find fulfilling jobs, especially for working breeds or dogs that have had dogs that are quite highly strung or nervous. It's a challenge I'm glad I don't face. I'm sorry, everyone.
No, I agree with that. So is there any other sort of special moments that have sort of come to mind now with Fergus?
I guess I'm probably Ferg with my kids was because when Fergus was born, I only had Jamie, so there was only one small human for him to worry about. And by the time he was an old dog, there was 5 of them. And he treated every single one of those kids as if they were the best thing that absolutely ever happened. And as the kids got older, as my eldest 2 daughters were teenagers when Fergus left us, they were always his special humans. There was plenty of other people he didn't like once they became older, but the kids were always precious to him. And he had a relationship with them, but like I said, he was a very difficult dog, so I never expected that from him. And I never expected how much he would, like, if there was an opportunity, he'd be, and not just because small kids drop food, if there was an opportunity, he'd be with them and they'd grab him, and especially the twins when they were little, there was two monsters together, and they'd pull themselves up with him and pull his ears, and he'd just think it was the best day ever. And that's a pretty big thing for a dog who was quite motivated to bite people, and a working dog.
And
in essence, he was a working animal. So, to have that reward system that he thinks that being traumatised by small children is a rewarding experience was pretty good. It's pretty special to me.
I can see that, absolutely.
There's a photo of him somewhere, and I don't know where they are. Joy, my middle boy, he was Joy's only a couple of, maybe a week or so old, and Fergus is laying under the bouncer, and just his ears and his nose sticking out from underneath it, and camped up under it, waiting to see if anyone comes to pick the baby up. Like, the baby's pretty safe.
Oh, nice.
He was a very good boy.
Yeah,
horrible boy. He got a very good boy on the other hand.
You keep saying that, but it's not the picture I've got over this conversation.
No, I loved him dearly. Yeah. There's some dogs that you think. I think I had 15 years with Fergus, and we're close to 15 years, and it just wasn't enough.
Never is.
No. And, I guess we're all, we're so fortunate to share our lives with them like that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very, very much for taking the time to have a chat with me, and I'm really happy to have known just a little bit about Fergus.
I'm honoured to be asked to share.
Thank you very much again. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening. I hope that you enjoy the show. Remember, the best way not to miss any of the upcoming episodes is to subscribe. Until next week, stay safe, and remember, your dog is family.